Hello, I'm Lauren Robel, Executive Vice President of Indiana University and Provost of our Bloomington campus. Congratulations to the Institute for International Business on its 10th anniversary. Indiana University is committed to global partnerships, and we believe in the power of global engagement to further public diplomacy. Therefore, I'm delighted to join you for this kickoff of the Kelley Worldwide Roundtable, a series that will serve as a model for productive global dialogue on some of the most pressing issues facing us today. This year's topic reaffirms the importance of global connectedness during periods of disruption and reflects the critical and ongoing need for thoughtful and cooperative cross-cultural exchange. In our highly connected world, businesses, systems, products, processes, and ideas know no borders. In a global crisis, our border-spanning partnerships are key to stability and continued progress. The pandemic we face is a testament to how interconnected we all are. We don't have to look much further than our own campus to witness how networks of support, communication, and encouragement stabilize both individuals and larger groups. In times of disruption, when plans and projects and lives are taken off course, these networks provide a framework on which to lean and ideas on which to draw. The pressures we face due to the pandemic are so extraordinary that we have to place a sharp focus on solving them together. I commend the Institute for International Business for leading the Kelley Worldwide Roundtable. At IU Bloomington, we remain committed to graduating students who are citizens of the world and who know the importance of connecting with one another through important conversations precisely like this one. Students from every inhabited continent travel to our campus to study, while thousands of our own students study abroad in a vast range of programs and across disciplines. We teach some 80 languages, more than any other university in the United States, and we organize regular events and showcases for our students the arts, ideas, and foods and traditions of cultures across the world. In immersing our students in diverse intellectual and cultural life, our goal is to graduate students who continue to learn across cultures and who celebrate difference and are informed by it. The Kelley School of Business shines bright in international education and actively reimagines how global business operates at its most optimal level. The Institute for International Business has connected Kelley's phenomenal creativity, energy, and people with the larger world. In true Kelley fashion, through the Kelley Worldwide Roundtable, it is forging a better pathway for us now. I want to congratulate the Institute on behalf of our entire campus on their 10th anniversary. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to join you today, virtually, to welcome you to this roundtable event. Its goal is to explore the importance of global connectedness during this period of such intense disruption of our society and our economy. The pandemic has reinforced something we already know, which is that addressing the most challenging issues of our time requires collaboration across countries and cultures, and requires the kind of innovation and creativity that are often sparked by bringing together multiple sources of expertise and multiple perspectives. For businesses worldwide, as for universities worldwide, it is critical at this moment to expand the channels of communication and engagement that promote the open exchange of ideas across borders. In that connection, I'm delighted that IU's Global Gateway offices have been able to play a role in supporting this event. The Gateway Network was designed to give IU a permanent presence in other regions of the world, bringing us closer to our academic partners, industry partners, and alumni to facilitate exactly this kind of durable cross-border engagement. The network was established just 6 years ago and now has offices in Bangkok, Beijing, Berlin, Mexico City, and New Delhi. And I'd like to thank the office directors who worked on this event. Today is also, of course, a celebration of global connectedness on the occasion of the Institute for International Business's 10th anniversary. In the same way that the Global Gateway offices connect IU with the world, the IIB connects the Kelley School of Business with the world through work to solve development challenges in emerging markets, always working in collaboration with local partners, through training programs in entrepreneurship and skills that build the capacity of individuals, businesses, and communities in developing countries, and through its educational programs here in the United States that provide international and intercultural learning opportunities to students in high school and beyond. The Institute's work models the kind of mutual engagement that will help us confront and address change at the scale that we're experiencing today. So, congratulations to the Institute for International Business, to Dean Heidi Kestner, to Executive Director Levon Schlegel and her team on this 10th anniversary. And thanks to all of you for coming together today to think about where we are and how we move forward together.
Hello from Bloomington. I'm Heidi Kestner, Dean of the Kelley School of Business. Thank you for participating in this important roundtable discussion and for helping us celebrate 10 years of the Institute for International Business, or as we refer to it, IIB. The IIB has a special significance to me, not just because I'm the Dean of Kelley, but I helped create the Institute 10 years ago. Our goal was to transform lives, organizations, and communities by nurturing partnerships and dreams, by building entrepreneurial knowledge in communities, and by creating momentum in emerging and developing markets. It's been wonderful to watch the IIB establish, foster, and grow new relationships and enterprises, particularly among women and young people, and in the areas where hope and progress are needed most. Through the years, we've watched Kelley's footprint expand around the globe. As examples, in Myanmar, our ADEPT program created training centers and strengthened faculty and curricula at Yangon University of Economics. In Bethlehem, we helped launch 13 startup companies and train more than 1,600 people in our business incubator. In Barbados, a partnership with the Cave Hill School of Business helped provide critical training to combat growing social and economic issues. I may be most proud of our Global Business Institute, or GBI. Through GBI, the partnership with Coca-Cola Company, we inspired nearly 600 young people in the Middle East and North Africa. These students hungered to know more about business and entrepreneurship, and they showed a willingness to push themselves and others towards something better. You can actually see the transformation in these students during their time in Bloomington and other locations in the U.S. They realized their dreams and ideas could be developed into viable businesses and projects that could lead to real change in their communities back home. The results? More than 160 small businesses were created that employed nearly 800 people. More than 160 participants in the program went on to earn scholarships for further study. And 95% of the students were employed within 3 months of graduating from college. Those are the statistics, but the real impact is immeasurable. IIB is also home to the Center for International Business Education and Research, or CIBER, which helps businesses in the U.S. compete successfully in the global marketplace. We're one of 15 national centers that are funded by the U.S. Department of Education. We manage funds for faculty development, internships, improving language skills, mentoring, and experiential learning. Over these 10 years, we've made many connections. But the word connections doesn't convey the fact that what we've really done is establish friendships. We built bridges between countries, fostered understanding, and created trusting, long-lasting relationships. We built empathy. One young participant in GBI said, "You don't just learn about business, you learn about people." While I had a hand in creating the IIB, there's no disputing that Levon Schlegel is the heart and soul of the Institute. I can't imagine anyone else working as tirelessly and with as much determination and purpose as she has over the last 10 years. Her commitment to bring people together and transform lives, that continues to be realized. Even so, the pandemic means we must become more nimble and innovative in our efforts. Of course, Lavon has had a lot of enthusiastic help over the years. In the early days of IIB, Sean Connor and Fred Perry played key roles. And while they moved on to other important things at the university and in the world, we're grateful for those early efforts. And then we have our current staff, some of whom have been here since the beginning. Christine Everett, Suzanne Lodato, Jeff Poland, Tim Smith, Trina Chandler, Ryan Craven, and Amanda Wood. To all of you, please accept my sincere gratitude. Your dedication is inspiring, and I like to think we've helped create a more connected world with your bigger and bolder ideas. To all of you joining in, thank you for being with us for this event. We're honored you've chosen to spend time with us. I'm very proud of IIB's diligent work and accomplishments. But there's still more work to be done. So this is a working celebration. I urge you to keep the conversation going long after the discussion and celebration ends. Get involved. Help us write more chapters for this ongoing global story. Help us continue to create momentum around the world and right here at Indiana University through our international efforts. Thank you and enjoy the program.
Good morning and welcome to the Indiana University's Kelley School of Business's Worldwide Roundtable. My name is Lavon Schlegel, and while I know some of you, I don't know everybody, but I am the Executive Director of the Institute for the International Business, or IIB as we are more casually known. It's my honor to follow such distinguished speakers as Provost Lauren Rebel, Vice President Hannah Buxbaum, and Dean Heidi Kessner, and I thank them for joining us to kick off our inaugural event in the celebration of our 10th anniversary. I also want to thank you all for joining us this morning at this first of our 4 global panels, all set to take place during the next 18 hours to discuss the importance of global connectedness. Here in ASEAN and India program, we kick off this morning, but we'll also be doing this in Europe and in Mexico and wrapping it up at Indiana University in Bloomington for our final conversation. You all are among the registrants to these 4 events, and it took a global team to put it together. I would like to thank Jen Goyens and Allison DeWitt from the Kelley Business Schools Alumni Association, Roy Hooper from the IU Alumni Association, Peter Bunjaran from the IU ASEAN Gateway, Zafina Suresh from the IU India Gateway, Stephen Yen from the IU Gateway China, Ali Batten, Director of the IU Global Gateways, Rob Clendening and Rebecca Salerno from Kelley Marketing, the Provost Office and Office of the Vice President for International Affairs, Zach Watt and Brian Boucher from Kelley Learning Media Team. And finally, I would like to thank Tim Smith from IIB, without whom this project would not have happened. During the past decade, IIB has been in the world working to bring people together with new thoughts, new ideas, new skills, and new relationships, always in hope of creating momentum for change. Reflecting back on these years, I am especially grateful that I got to attend IU as an undergraduate student at a time that provided me with the great privilege of knowing Chancellor Herman Wells through the work I did with the student organization in the very early 1980s. As a farm kid from Indiana, the Chancellor encouraged me to go beyond what I knew and what was my comfort zone, and to experience the world for all of its possibilities and challenges. His words have encouraged me throughout my career, bringing me to today, to this event. I know that Chancellor Wells would be proud of what we have accomplished, but ask us in the very next breath, what's next? What's next in our work on the global stage? What's next in creating and maintaining the global relationships that have moved business forward with such velocity in the past 20 years? What's next for making sure that we all have a chance to learn and grow from our relationships with partners and friends around the world? And along with the what next, we must also look to the how we do it together, because it is this sharing between nations, businesses, and people where the best ideas and the best solutions are born. So it's no small task that we have asked you all to participate in today. Our moderator and panel will tackle some of these questions head on, sharing their ideas, experiences, and hopes. In the breakout sessions, we look to all of you here today to share your ideas and actions for keeping your global network active and engaged during this period of disruption. With that, I am so pleased to introduce today's moderator, Shoaib Kagda. Shoaib is founder of Synthesis Communications Indonesia, founder of Indonesia Economic Forum, and chairman of Singapore Chamber of Commerce Indonesia. Shoaib is an Indonesia-based media and business consultant specializing in co-creating content and business advisories. During his 22 years of work experience, he has built an extensive network consisting of senior government officials, business leaders, top bankers, entrepreneurs, and policymakers. In 2007, he launched Asia, Indonesia's first English language magazine, which annually publishes the 150 richest Indonesians and the top 100 groups list. The magazine today has a circulation of 60,000 and is the only Indonesia-based publication that is distributed regionally. In 2014, he launched the Indonesia Economic Forum, a multi-stakeholder platform that allows business, government, civil society, and academic leaders to come together and discuss new ideas to take Indonesia forward. He is also a founding member and council member of the Singapore Chamber of Commerce Indonesia and was elected to be chairman in July 2020. Shoaib earned his Bachelor of Arts degree from Indiana University, Bloomington, graduating with a double major in journalism and political science. Please join me in welcoming this evening's moderator, Shoaib Kagda.
Thank you, Lavon. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you, Lavon, for that introduction. I'm very happy to be here. I think what I can say that I'm most proud of is that I graduated from the Ernie Powell School of Journalism from Indiana University. We have a very distinguished panel today, and I think we have participants from across the world. It is my honor and my privilege to moderate this session, and I look forward to engaging with all of you and having a very lively discussion. In the last few years, we embrace as a global community a heavily experiential world, driven by an era of pop-up stores, Instagram-worthy moments, and many other factors of being an experiential economy. But with COVID-19, we have not been able to travel, we've not able to shop, dine, and socialize, we entertain as in the past. The pandemic has driven a rapid shift in consumer behavior. As consumers engage, as they re-engage with the economy, it is no exaggeration today to say that the post-COVID world has changed irrevocably. This panel will explore, analyze, and provide some insights into the emerging trends. What will the new connectedness mean for all of us as individuals, as business leaders, as entrepreneurs, as educators? We are seeing a dramatic shift in the way we connect with each other and the way we connect with the wider world. There is, in fact, what I call a disconnected connectedness emerging. Today, we talk about buffer zones in supply chains. We talk about travel bubbles as countries try and navigate how they can reopen their borders. We talk about green lanes in encouraging more domestic travel within countries, and many other similar measures. The fact that we here are sitting in different time zones across vast geographical distances speaks to this new reality, which is why I think this webinar and this initiative by Kelley and IIB is a really worthy endeavor. Can I please introduce my two panelists who are going to share with us their insights today? Mr. Ian Lee, he's the head of the Asia Pacific at Adecco Group AG. Ian's purview includes India. In this capacity, Ian has overall responsibility for the group's general and professional staffing businesses across the Asia Pacific region. Ian is a Singaporean. He started his career in 1990 with Procter & Gamble, working for the organization in the US and Asia for 13 years. Before joining the Adecco Group in September 2017, Ian spent the last 14 years with Whirlpool Corporation, holding various positions, including Vice President of Corporate Affairs and Business Development in Asia. Ian, welcome, and we're looking forward to hearing your insights. My other panelist is Mr. Sandeep Sinha. He's the CEO of Taffe Tractors and Farm Equipment. Chennai-based Taffe is the world's third largest tractor manufacturer and the second largest in India by volume. Mr. Sinha was joined Taffe after a successful track record spanning over 2 decades with many global and domestic experience. Mr. Sinha, welcome. May I please refer you to Sandeep? So thank you for joining us. Ian, can we start off with maybe just briefing us a little bit about your career and experience and what you feel is your core skill today, and how you see, we'll come to it later on, how you see the world emerging post-COVID.
You know, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. You know, it is actually very, very interesting that you know, we are having you know, a connectedness to the world via Zoom, and you know, 12 months ago, when you talk about events like this, it is probably unheard of. So that's a kudos to what I call the new connectiveness. My name is Ian Lee. I graduated with from the Kelley School in 1988, end of 1988 and 1990 with my MBA from Kelley School, and my career have spanned across a couple of continents, managing business in around the world. So I would basically said that you know, before I came over to Bloomington in 1985, all of this is unimaginable. And you know, I think Kelley's propelled me and has given me the momentum to become a global citizen. Okay, you know, I am very happy that I can be participating today. My company, Adecco Group, currently is one of the world's largest HR company. We provide permanent services, we provide temporary services, we provide everything you can think of from a HR needs standpoint. And we are also a global 500 companies. And my responsibility over here basically have spanned across the entire Asia Pacific region, from Japan, China, you know, all the way to Indonesia, all the way to Australia and New Zealand. But I can also tell you, you know, when we started with 2020, I cannot imagine where we are right now. And thank you very much. Very happy to participate afterwards.
Thank you, Ian. Sandeep, could you just give us a brief background on yourself and, you know, your career so far?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Shoaib, and for the introduction you gave for me and for Ian. And hello again, Ian. Nice that we get to connect in this platform. Very good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all our participants in different parts of the world. I'm actually an engineer by background, but I joined Kelley after 6 years of working with the French multinational Saint-Gobain in India. I graduated from the Kelley MBA program in 2004. I started my career in the US with Cummins. And then I moved back to India with Cummins. They started to expand their operations here. And eventually I left Cummins a year ago as the managing director of Cummins in India. I've recently joined TAFE, which is a tractor and farm equipment manufacturer in India and in other parts of the world. And for me, Kelley was really the jumpstart. It was the momentum builder for my career. I enjoy and relish every minute of my time spent in Bloomington over those 2 wonderful years. I wish there was something called advanced MBA, which I could get back to Kelley for, but I love participating in forums like these. So thank you for having me here. It gets me connected back to the wonderful institute. Look forward to our conversation today.
Thank you, Sandeep, and thank you, Ian, for that brief introduction. So let's get started immediately. As we have all said, the past 8-9 months have changed the world. We cannot go back. We can only go forward, but where we are heading, we are not quite sure. So maybe Ian and then Sandeep, how has COVID changed the way you do business today? Has it changed irrevocably? Has it changed fundamentally? Ian, if you can get us started.
Yeah, it is actually a very interesting reflection, Shrop, because it changes in a certain way. It did not change in a certain way. Why did I say that? I think the key things is this: the financial communities, because I think a lot of our companies are publicly listed companies. As a publicly listed companies, I did not see that the financial communities give you relief because of COVID. You're still being tied to your quarterly results. You still have to deliver on a monthly basis. So I think in that aspects of things, we are actually probably back to normal. In the whole cycle of earnings reportings, and all those things. However, in order to make those numbers, I think your activities, you cannot be stopping, okay? That's why I say that, I think over this period of time, personally, I myself felt that, yes, I'm probably staying put. I traveled probably 120 days away from home in the last couple of years because, the region is fairly big. But since March, I have not been traveling. So I've been staying put in Singapore. And for a certain period of time, over 2 months, I'm always at my study room. But I can also tell you one thing, that I felt that I'm even more busier than the past, because time and time zone has just gone away. Okay. I think, Shob, just now you talk about, sales needs to go on, okay? But, how to do sales when you did not have the face-to-face context that we usually knows of, okay? So you have to find new ways, new means, new avenue of conducting those activities, okay? I can also tell you that over this period of time, I think a lot of people is probably talking about new way of working from home. But I can also tell you that there is actually a lot of stress in the organization because, especially in this part of the world, apartments, space are not it's at a premium versus in a lot of places. And, being confined in very tight space with everybody at home, it's going to get people crazy also fairly easily. So there's also increased incidence of mental illness, things that we never really thought about happens. But there are also things that changes. I would basically say permanent change. I can tell you one thing. I was just telling people about Japan. Okay, in my life, I would never imagine Japan is transforming. Japan is probably one of the worst from a digital standpoint. But the thing is this: right now, I have a 2,000 people organization over in Japan, and only 25% of the people comes to work. In the past, these are the people that will not leave the office until the boss have left the office. Okay, so there are habits change and all those things. I think we need to capitalize on those changes. So I'm going to leave it here because I'm going to give Sandeep a chance to talk.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Sandeep, how has COVID-19 changed the way you do business?
Yeah, first of all, Ian, thank you very. I share a lot of what you just said in your views. To me, I think what this whole situation has done is, first of all, help me understand who were my leaders who had extraordinary resilience. This is an aspect of leaders where I don't know whether we kind of paid as much attention to. Because for us, the industry didn't stop for a day. We came under essential goods. Farm equipments were put as essential goods in India, and for that matter, for most parts of the world. So we had to build tractors, we had to sell tractors, but we had to do it with a very different mindset. For example, social distancing is not a virtue of our country in India, just because of the sheer population, but also because of many cultural aspects. So it was really difficult to implement, but we had to change, because if we did not, and if we did not follow the government's procedures and all the right procedures, I think, for managing the containment of this pandemic, I think we would not have come out good. So I think from day one, actually, we for us, when this whole, in India, when the shutdown happened, we had less than 48 hours to get back on track. And we realized that, yes, we are essential goods, so we have to behave differently from several of the industries around us who just shut shop. And I think that built a very early momentum for our industry, not just for our company, for our industry, because we didn't shut down. And I think, in my view, a lot of things that we said would not be possible has been clearly made possible. So when you're in an environment where you see all doors closing, you start to innovate, whether it is on the digital platform. Like Ian said, even in India, most traditional companies couldn't fathom the aspect of working from home. We just didn't even have the infrastructure, but you'll be surprised that within 15 to 20 days, that infrastructure was building up. And I think the speed of reaction, agility, resilience, these are things that I think have come out. And I also think that well-managed companies with these attributes will actually come out better than before this pandemic. I think companies that are not able to change, that are not agile, and that are not resilient will not be able to make it through this pandemic. That is my view.
Right. Thank you very much. I think you made some very good points, both you and Ian. Resilience, the impossible becoming possible, social behavioral patterns that we thought would never change have changed. Really, I think some people have said that over the past 10 years since the 2008 global crisis, there's been a lot of frost building in terms of wastefulness and how companies operate. The pandemic has actually forced leaders such as yourself to really drill down and focus on what is essential and what really drives your business. So in that sense, maybe Sandeep, you can start first. What has been your biggest challenge as you ensure that your company stayed stable and continue to operate and continue to grow within this very, very difficult environment?
You know, one of the biggest challenges, I'll start with me as the leader, has been, this constant trade-off to say, am I doing the right thing? Am I endangering any of my employees? So, for example, our sales team has to go and connect to the farmers, for example. There's not much of that digital interaction that takes place. Having said that, I'll also give you an example of how that is changing very quickly. But I think that was my biggest worry all the time, because I wanted to ensure that every employee of mine and their families were safe. But then again, it brought out the best in us, because we started to do a lot of training. We passed on a lot of COVID protection kits, things that we would have generally taken a month to do were being done in days, in hours. So I think certainly one of the biggest challenges for me was when the employees came back after 3 weeks of lockdown back into the factory. We employ in all our factories, thousands and thousands of people, and you have subcontractors, you have transporters coming in and out. So how to manage that in a very safe way? I think the second thing was, I remember when the first COVID case in my factories were announced. I honestly don't think I slept well that night. But over a period of time, you kind of assimilate and your mindset into saying, hey, this is going to happen, and your understanding and ability to react to those becomes much more stronger. And so yes, those were some of the challenges as a leader to ensure that every one of ours was safe. Till now, luckily, we have had cases, but they've all recovered and are fine and are back to work or are either recovering. So I think that was my biggest challenge for the company. The biggest challenge, of course, were in many different directions, but I think the supply chain disruption to me was the single biggest challenge for the company.
Right. Ian, if I may come to you now, you run a human resource, helping companies manage human resources and human capital. A lot of companies have had to lay off thousands of workers. From your perspective, what for Adecco itself, what was your biggest challenge, and how do you see the challenge from the industry as a whole?
I think, Shop, I think for me, if I think about it, the biggest challenge for me during this period of time, I would start with the first one is actually managing uncertainty. Okay, it's a lot of things that happens. You cannot be preparing for it. Like the second wave of Australia in Melbourne, in which there is a very, very severe lockdown, probably even worse than the first one that happens. Things like that, you cannot be expecting. You cannot be expecting that the world has actually moved into a new norm. For example, we got a huge surge in terms of our business in the e-commerce sector, and how very quickly you need to be redeploying your people. We got a huge decline in our permanent recruitment because of the uncertainty. Nobody is looking for a lot of employees are actually holding off on employment, and it's actually across every countries and in this region. Japan before the crisis was every job seeker basically have 1.7 jobs waiting for them. In this 9 months, it is now down to one job seekers for one jobs. So there is actually a big shift in terms of our traditional understanding of supply and demand. So, the biggest challenge for us, for me actually, is how to manage this and how to manage the people to be managing this. Because I can also tell you the impact of the second, I would say, lockdown in Melbourne, the one that is very, very severe. I see that people literally is, you look at their face, the mental, this anguish of the second lockdown, it's so big. Okay, so those are, I would basically say, the challenge that which is a constant over this period. But I can also tell you right now that the challenge now is how not to wait until the next crisis happens, but start fine-tuning the operations, and all those things. I think that's the challenge that we are facing right now. And clearly, because of the current state, I think the mindset of a lot of the leaders, like what Sandeep talked about, has to change also. Like, for example, they need to be more sensitive. They need to focus more on their soft skill. Emotional intelligence become very, very important. It's not bang, 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 So things like that, it's another challenge. And the challenge has becomes more complicated when all of this are happening with the screen.
Right. So I think from what I sense, both of you, really the job of a leader is managing change, yeah? And we are going through unprecedented change. Do you think that, in terms of the qualities that you look for in your organization and in your leaders, Sandeep, you mentioned resilience, Ian, you mentioned the ability to manage people who need to manage change, Do you think agility in terms of both intellectual agility and an ability to move your organizations, is that something that has become more critical, do you think, and will become more critical post-COVID? Ian, maybe you go first and then come to Sandeep.
Yeah, I think, honestly, having the ability to be agile has always been a very important trait, but I would also say, agility is not the only thing, okay? If you are agile, but you cannot be bringing the whole organization along, it is not very useful, okay? So I think it is also very critical to keep the agility while able to mobilize people when you cannot be, doing the traditional things to mobilize people. I think that is probably more important. I think that's why I talk about soft skills. I talk about emotional intelligence, and it's very important. Words that comes up recently more and more is about empathy. It's about being supportive. So a lot of those words in the past probably is more HR. Now is probably a words of leaderships.
Right. Sandeep, is agility an important consideration for you?
Sure. I mean, and again, as Ian said, among the leaders, it's just not one leadership skill that can take absolute prominence. I think it's a gambit of skills that a good leader should have. I think what is becoming more, to me, my experience has shown that first is number one is caring, empathy, whatever you call it. But I think that is absolutely necessary. People are worried about themselves, of their families, whether it's the elderly or the young children, etc. So, I can see good leaders talking a lot more to their people, and kind of keeping that communication going. Working from home has had its own challenges, and not everybody has a home office in India. Not everybody has a lot of space in their homes. Generally, the houses are small. There's a lot of disturbances, and they are on a call. And I think there is this sense of I don't know, I can always see a sense of despair at times because they don't want to disturb the meeting and they still have to participate and they're trying their best, but it's just difficult. So all of that put together, I think caring and empathy are two skill sets that I see leaders who have done well in this time clearly demonstrate that. As I talked about it, resilience is absolutely creative. I do think in our business, agility and innovation is very important. And the reason is, many traditional doors have been closed. I'll give you an example. Moving our goods from, let's say Southern India to Northern India was very difficult because all the state borders were closed. How does a logistic team work with the Indian Railways and get our goods onto that? We've never done those kind of things before, and setting up those different routes, etc. Finding that one solution out of the 100 possibilities and being at it, I think was very critical. So I do feel that a gambit of such skills will be things that I will look forward to. Leaders who can deal with ambiguity, for example, things like that. So,
right. Thank you very much for that. The session that we are on is really about connectedness and how we continue to be connected in this world. Over the past 10 years, there's been a lot of talk about globalization, and then there was a backlash against globalization. The pandemic, like as you said, has disrupted supply chains. How important is it for companies such as yours, to still be regarded as global companies, to be considered to be part of the globalization sphere that we have, built and looked on as the new norm, for global businesses? Sandeep, maybe you can continue first, and then I'll come to Ian on that.
Sure. I think there are different aspects of being a global company. I think first of all, how will global companies, will they survive or not, is like the first question that many people ask, and I think the answer is absolutely yes. They will, because we will have to reinvent ourselves in many cases. And remember, these are all situational based. There was a time when trade was global, then there was a time when trade became less global, then it became very global. And so if you look at history, this is not anything new. I know that we talk about this last phase of globalization because it happened in a very short period of time. Okay, and so to see it move had also a reciprocal, kind of reaction to say, oh my God, we are not global anymore, or we may not be a global economy anymore. I don't think so. I think economies will be global. I think there will be shifts in the way we consider what is global. So for example, R&D, in my view, will always be global today because there's great leverage and learning across. I think supply chain will still be global, but it will also be local in many different ways. So I think there will be, for example, for my servicing my plant in Turkey, I would like to have a lot of my content to be local, but there are certain critical components which will be global. Or we may even have local sources, but as a backup, we will have a global source for them. So, we will have regional diversification of supply chain and dependent yet independent from each other. So I'm a firm believer in globalization. I don't think it's going to change because of short, brief periods of political and geopolitical issues or a pandemic such as the one we are facing right now. Yes, it has disrupted us, but I think we will get back and we will look different from what a global company looked like before, but we will still be global.
Right. So if I may just, summarize, the trajectory is still the same. But of course, some things may change, and there's been a little bit of disruption. Ian, I mean, you are in the recruitment business. In the past, the mantra was look for the best talent no matter where, right? And bring them, and companies would look for that kind of talent anywhere in the world. Does that still hold in this current environment? And how do you see that changing going forward? Are companies going to be focusing more on their domestic markets to recruit talent, or is it still a globalized world in the hunt for talent? Ian, he's shut off. You're gonna unmute.
You hear? Okay, sorry. I think we. I need to do some clarification. When you look at the spectrum of talent, okay, actually, when you talk about global talent, you are only talking about a very, very, in terms of population-wise, a very, very small population, a very, very high-end population, okay? I think those talents are not going to change. Those talents are going to be remaining global. And then if you count, you can actually, count how many are there, even within the Asia Pacific region or even in Singapore. I would say most of the talent, blue collar mass talents, are still quite local. It goes to what I said just, in terms of my business model. I think it's still, and I think it goes to a lot of other businesses also. I think to be a global company, you need to be successful and win in the local marketplace and be the best that you can be in the local marketplace and beat your local competitors first, okay? And, I think first of all, you got to do that. No matter it's pre-pandemic or after pandemic, you also got to still do that and basically win market share in the local marketplace. Now, being a global company is, to us, probably from an infrastructure standpoint, from a tool standpoint, from a digitization standpoint, if you have the mass, of resources, how you can be doing those things more efficiently and faster than a local company that has lesser of a resources. That's how I think from my business, which, Shoaib, it's going to be very different when you are producing something. I can imagine that Sandeep, from now, the thing that he needs to think about is how is the geopolitical factor impacting his supply chain. In the past, honestly, in the last 20, 30 years, if you think about supply chain, it's actually all about China. Okay, and I can tell you, I spent a lot of time trying to move supply chain from China to India, but it is actually not that easy, because when you think about your plant, it is not just your plant; it is basically the whole ecosystem that produce produce the final products. So I think different business needs to think differently. How to de-risk yourself. But I can tell you, doing that is going to add costs. Then at a certain point of time, the demand of the market is going to make you really, really rethink how to do things a little bit more efficiently. I think it's going to go around that cycle.
Right.
That's my point. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I think both of you are basically on the same point, that things might change, but probably the trajectory and the bigger picture will not change. Yeah. I think we'll have one more question before we go into Q&A. I think there are some questions coming up. If you look at the past 6 to 8 months, what have you done to make your business better? And what are the good things that you've learned during this period that you think will stand you in good stead as we all move, hopefully soon to the post-COVID world? Ian, maybe you can start out on this.
Okay, from my side, I can tell you, a big part of our cost is on our infrastructure, rentals, offices, and all those things. Because in this region, I have about 6,000 full-time employees. Okay, I deploy people. In this, I have probably about over 2 million people in our payroll. On a daily basis in all of Asia Pacific region. I can tell you we are actually trying to reduce our footprint, significantly. For example, in Japan, we are reducing close to 50% of our real estate, and we are taking a write-off to get out of all this rentals, and all those things, because we felt that it's not going to be the same. Okay, so we are not going to waste any of such crisis. Okay, I think the other thing is basically we are also going into new businesses. I think this is the best time to go into new businesses. We are actually also transforming our business to be less physical and more digital. Okay, so those are the things that we are changing in order to use this pandemic as an enabler, as a catalyst for change.
Right. So I think you are a strong believer in the term "don't waste a good crisis." Yeah.
I think this is very important. I think, of course, just now, Sandeep, you talk about number one priority is about people. Of course, you need to ensure that your people is safe. Never put them in harm's way. But I think the second one is never waste a crisis.
Right. Thank you very much. Sandeep, how have you not wasted this crisis in terms of looking at this past 8 months and saying, this has helped me to do what I was going to do or hope to do, but forced me to do?
Yes. In my over 2 decades of professional experience, I have never seen change and reinvention happening at a pace that I am seeing today. Never. And I do think that, as I said earlier, good companies will come out of this pandemic to become great companies if they reinvent and reinvent themselves. And this is a very different type of reinvention, right? This is not a reinvention where you kind of get in 10 consultants and you work with them and you have you have to do it on the go. So for me, I think when we started, first thing was, of course, on making sure that the cost structures were in such a position to be able to manage good financially strong results. That was something very, very critical. And secondly, it was about market share, to ensure that in this, if you took the right approach, you could come out gaining market share because you would be fast. If you could be faster, smarter, better than the rest, there was headway for you. Or tailwinds for you, if you say. Right. So that to me was there. I think certainly, for me, transforming the business with through digital transformation has been critical. We took a decision to change our entire CRM platform because we realized that the platform we were on was not something that would take us into the next decades to come. So we've actually, in this crisis, were able to find the partner which we wanted to start the program. And I can tell you in the next 2.5 months, we will be going live. So I think, in fact, this is probably the fastest CRM implementation even our partners have seen anywhere in the world. But we've had to do it because we had no choice. The way we do build business, even in the interiors of India, has become digital. We've had situations where movement of people were not allowed, but a farmer needed their equipment up and running, and we have done Zoom calls with them. It's unbelievable, huh? WhatsApp video calls, and help them get their asset back into running conditions with whatever spares was available. It's been innovation to the highest level. So now we are going into a very different service model. We are saying, hey, let's look back and say, why do we want to do, and go back to the old model where you have thousands of service engineers in very severe hierarchies. We are saying, no, when we can do it through all these products that can connect you to the last mile very quickly. So I think it's a question of reinventing our policies around people, our policies around digital, and making the best out of it. So I actually think we will come out of this as a company, as an organization, way stronger than when we entered the pandemic cycle.
Right. So I think what we can say is that change has been accelerated. Yeah. Things that would have taken many years suddenly got compressed into a few months, and you realize that you could actually do this change quite quickly. Do you think going forward that your organizations will be very much different from what they are today structurally? Sandeep, maybe you can do
yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes, they will be. They will be. We will become leaner for sure as a company. We will become also, as I said, we will become very digital. I think the pace of digitization is going to really accelerate, and we have everything in place today. We are in a connected world. Our ability to collect data is high. Our ability to transmit data, store data is moving to new levels of competency each year. And I think all that put together will only get accelerated. So yes, we will work very differently. We will behave very differently, for that matter, than what we did in a much more traditional world.
Right. Before we move to Ian, I think I'd just like to invite all participants to submit questions to the panelists. If you have some, you can either go through the chat, or I think Tim can help to moderate some of these questions. Ian, on that same question, do you see Adecco being a very much different company going forward in terms of your structure and how you would operate? I mean, you mentioned some of it already in terms of squeezing and looking at efficiencies, but beyond that, do you think digitalization will play a much bigger role in how your company operates?
Yeah, the interesting thing is digitization will give you a new path of access, what I call that. Okay, in the past, the more traditional way is to go to the country or go to the location and put down a map. Just like what Sandeep talked about in India, you need to have branches everywhere. You need to have service network everywhere. But I think with that, it's no difference when you have you need to penetrate into markets that has big geographies. Australia, India, China. You should be thinking of how to reach people digitally. In which I think that the infrastructure and all those things is always there, is already there. But the thing is this now, I think this pushes us to basically make it work. So I think that is going to change a lot. So I'm thinking from a structure standpoint that one will be different versus now. Okay. Of course, then there are other things such as infrastructure, the cost savings. Those comes as part of the package. Then then I think about myself. In terms of travel, I don't need to travel so much. I think there is also the needs for his human interaction when we come back to normal. But I can also tell you, I think we were able to prove that this business model, a hybrid business model of interaction, works.
Right. Thank you very much. We have some questions from the participants. Let me just read it to you. What advice do you give your employees as they navigate new ways to stay connected and engage with global staff and partners? So, Ian, what's the advice you give to your employees so that they can stay connected with their global with staff around the world and with their partners?
I tell you honestly, Ashok, on this one, I don't see any shortcuts. In fact, I would basically say this one probably needs to be accelerated. In times like this, when you cannot have face-to-face interaction, you probably want to do it more often virtually. Okay, through phone calls, to face-to-face, through Zoom meetings, and all those things. I think those things needs to be accelerated. No difference than talking to your people. Okay, but with this modern technology, certainly you can reach a lot of people very quickly. So do not waste that capabilities.
Right. Sandeep, there are some questions for you. If I may just read it. We are an MSME industrial equipment manufacturer and have tremendous on-site work. How can we take advantage of the digital move in our model?
Okay. So this seems to be, MSME is a term I've only heard in India. So
yeah, I think it's an Indian company.
For the participants, these are medium and small scale industries. And so I think the question is, how can they, service a lot of the on-site jobs that are required out of them? The answer is there will be certain types of jobs that you will physically have to have people come and do within the factories, in the production line, etc. Having said that, things like negotiations, which had to happen in person for whatever reason, I think that part of the element of the whole process has to be, it doesn't require people to come and travel. I can tell you that we've had so many new distributors, not just in India but around the world, come in and join us at this stage. And it's been done, through this, digital interface. So a lot of the, kind of those regular, unnecessary visits and face-to-face discussions actually don't need to be done. Now, of course, if you have to approach a line and you're on, let's say, you've come here to do a maintenance of an equipment you have supplied or something, you'll probably have to do it. A lot of the DIY kind of thing can also be done with the help of, for example, the maintenance staff of the plant. And, where vendors were not eager to kind of teach their local staff because they thought that's their core competency, will now need to be done differently, and the rate contracts have to change. So continuously look for opportunities to say, how can we do it with less cost and pass on the benefits to your customers so that they feel engaged. So a lot of our cost reductions that we were able to do, while when we passed it on to the customer, they felt happy to say, hey, yes, I didn't have this in the past. I had to do this myself, but I also got the advantage of that. And I think that's what makes it a win-win for everyone. So I think you should think about those interfaces.
Right. Okay, we have a couple more questions before we wrap up the session, I think. There's one question on the widening income inequality gap. The 1% versus the 99%. We've seen that the COVID-19 pandemic has kind of exacerbated that gap, like we said earlier on, not everybody can work from home. There are jobs that people need to go out and work, right? Whether they're sales staff, transportation workers, they've lost jobs, they become unemployed, the higher end middle class and upper middle class, they're okay. They have homes where they can work from, As business leaders, how do you prepare your companies and how do you protect your workers, really, especially the bottom end of the ladder workers? How do you see this situation evolving? Sandeep, maybe you go first, and then I'll come to Ian.
Sure. And I think I saw this question pop up on my screen.
Yes.
And I think I actually noted the name. I think it was Vanessa who was asked this question.
Yes.
I'll tell you, Vanessa, this is in whatever little free time we have nowadays. I spend a lot of my time thinking about this situation. And this is not a one company situation. This is not a one region situation. This is a situation where every citizen of the world has to think about. Because this is, the answer is the gap is widening and widening at a much faster rate than before. So, you know, I don't, obviously I don't have the solution. I wouldn't be here if I had one. But I think we all have to take it upon ourselves to be very thoughtful of this question. So one of the things that certainly as a company we are doing is to say because we are in this industry which caters to farmers. So we are saying we have to be much more aggressive in providing those solutions that can actually make the farmers way more profitable in the past. Okay. So we've taken it upon ourselves to say, you know, there are two ways. One is to say, yeah, it's a problem, the government has to solve it. Two, as we work with the government, a lot of our emphasis and push as leaders have to be to influence the government and their policies to help the, the people who couldn't make it. I'm actually glad to tell you that, you know, what I have seen of the government has been very, very, with a lot of positive response. Whether they do it for vote banks or whatever else, it doesn't matter. But what we are seeing is the result of this kind of pressure, where I think the government, at least I can tell you in India, has been looking and saying, how do we make sure that class that is going to be so severely impacted, how do we safeguard their interests? And I think governments across the world will have to look at and say, what, you know, you cannot work on a capitalist model anymore. You cannot have 1% of the world become, you know, 10x more richer in this pandemic than they were before. If they were worth whatever trillions of dollars, now they've become worth, you know, into so many X more trillion. That's not going to, it's just not right and not fair. And I think governments have to take a call and say what they need to do to protect their citizens. And their citizens are not the rich people or the influential people. Their citizens are actually the people of the lower income category.
Right. Thank you, Sandeep. I think you're right. It has actually forced a lot more thinking on this issue, both from the government perspective as well as from the private sector. We are coming to the end of our session. Maybe ask Ian first to kind of just wrap up a little bit in terms of, there's a question from Mr. Fred Schlegel. And I think it's a nice question to wrap up the session. As you make plans for the future, what are the signals that you're watching for to guide your business decisions, both from a business perspective, from a political environment perspective, from a social environment perspective? What signals are you looking for? And then Ian, you can maybe take a shot at that question. And then I'll come back to Sandeep to kind of just get your thoughts on wrapping up the session.
Yeah. You know, I think, as business people right now, you really need to be, I would say, multifaceted forecaster. Even weather can affect you, okay? I have never taken interest of a US election that much in my whole life, even when I was staying in the US, okay? But there is actually no one dimension. I think there are a lot of dimensions. I think the key is basically understand, control what you can control. What do I mean by that? You have to understand, like geopolitical situation. Let's say today, if Trump continued to have 4 more years in the White House, what types of situation is going to be? So I think you have to be prepared for that. But you also have to be prepared if Biden comes into the White House. But, there are things that you can be more prepared, but you cannot control. And I would basically say, don't try to control that, but prepare on that. the things that I would basically be watching very carefully is basically demand and competitors. Okay, demand is is very important, because without demand, I think the business it's not going to survive. But nowadays, I'm watching a lot on competitors, because I can also tell you, with all the things that is happening, a lot of time it is not the traditional competitors that is going to attack you and hit you hard. It's the non-traditional one that basically have a new model of going to market, or basically have a new model of basically completely change the needs of your products, put it this way. So those are the things, those are the disruption that you need to be thinking for yourself, but also thinking about your competitors and about the marketplace. And that is how I would put it as a close.
Okay, thank you so much. Sandeep, maybe you can share with us your closing comments to the participants, listening in, 1 or 2 key messages that they can walk away from.
Sure.
Walk away with.
Yeah. Now, I think, as I said earlier, you'll have to learn to deal with ambiguity, because we are going to be in an ambiguous situation. I keep joking to many of my friends and peers outside India that, countries like India actually train you to deal with ambiguity. I'm sure Ian has worked in India, and sure, I don't know how much you have or any of our participants.
Indonesia's the same.
Right. So these kind of countries, they train you, because you never know when you wake up the next day what's it going to look like. And so, but when I lived in the US for some years, I had become used to structure. I had become used to predicting. I even knew the weather 7 days ahead. I even knew whether if I would reach in 40 minutes from one city to the other. And I think this goes, I would say, this kind of dealing with ambiguity, with uncertainty, and to keep a mindset that is very agile and very much ready to change, very much ready for disruptions, I think will be your one message I would leave you. The second is, please empathize with people whom you interact with, because you don't know what they are going through other than behind on the screen that you see them. So I would say these two would be my key messages to the participants.
Thank you very much. I think really some deep insights and a lot of food for thought from both our panelists. It leads me to thank you so much, Ian and Sandeep, for sharing your insights, your time. I think most valuable is your emotions with us. I think in today's world, really having that connectedness is really the human emotion that we continue to share amongst us. So thank you very much. It's been a privilege and an honor to be part of this panel discussion. And I hand it back to the IU team.